In my years as a psychologist, I have come to believe that most people seeking psychotherapy are unhappy not only because of earlier hurts and traumas, as well as present day frustrations and problems, but because they cannot access earlier happy memories, often resulting in not being able to experience enough positive states of well-being. This introduction is very important for me as I now want to talk to you about developing, discovering, finding ways to help us as people to live an enchanted life, a life of beauty and achievement and well-being rather than lives of despair. As I began to practice psychotherapy and deal with my clients, I became more and more concerned and at the same time really wondering what was wrong with mental health care in this country, and I would assume also in Europe and other major areas of the world. It seemed to me that most of the time when people came in with problems, they found therapists who were certainly willing to help them with a problem, but very often made them feel even worse about themselves because they were so eager to point out some of the difficulties that the person was having and not picking up enough on the talents and potential that lurked within each person. I decided to take it upon myself to run a program that would help me and help the people of the world come closer to their talents and their abilities and their potential. But to do this, being a psychologist with a license, etc., I had to do it right. So over a couple of years, I interviewed 20 women of various ages about their childhoods, about their adulthood, what gave them pleasure, what upset them, what they saw as losses of their potential or talents. And I recorded everything, spent at least an hour with each of these women. And I came to discover certain conclusions. The major conclusions I came to were that these women often had dreams of wonderful things they wanted to do when they grew up, or they were older, or they got married, whatever. But oftentimes they met up with the trauma that oftentimes someone else, like a brother or a husband, took first place rather than they oftentimes they couldn't get to college because the brother went to college. So there were lots of family issues that kept women from their potential. And fortunately, I can say over the last 50 years, that has improved to some extent. Not enough, but to some extent. So once I had finished analyzing my conclusions, now I was ready to help people around the world recognize more of their potential and how to utilize it. And also, I began to talk to psychologists and other people working in the mental health field to try to get them, I was pushing them a little bit to get to a point where they would start to find the talents and the interests of their clients very soon in seeing them, so they could really help people not only handle their problems, but learn how to begin to access their potential. In the beginnings, I handled it mostly in my own practice room as a practicing psychologist. My husband also is a practicing psychologist. We shared an office, and it was there that I began to develop a way in the very first session of being with a client to ask that client to tell me, when were they most happy in life? When did they do something that gave them pleasure? When did they find a trait or an interest in themselves that they wanted to develop, whether they did or not? What did they find out about themselves? What did they want to do with their lives? And after a while, I started to write articles about these ways of starting psychotherapy. I had quite a few people in therapy who, when they finished, thanked me for helping them realize how special and their talents were. And eventually, at the various conferences that my husband and I went to, I was noted as one of the first people in the field of psychology to develop positive psychology, particularly in the way I had. And it was noted to some extent. Sometimes I was regarded as being a breakthrough psychologist, and at times I was challenged. I had one woman I remember was quite a famous elderly psychologist at the time, and I was at a conference, and she came up to me and she said, "I don't know exactly what you're doing, but I don't know where you find these clients and patients that have a lot of talents." And I wanted to say to her, every client I've ever had has potential. Every client I've ever had, it could do many wonderful things if only they got the chance. But I didn't want to insult her. I walked away, she walked away. And over the years, positive psychology has become a very recognized field where it is understood, I think, by many of the clinicians that call themselves positive psychologists, that they are looking to increase the talents and potential of their clients. And I'm thrilled about that. This is not a race. We can all share, because whatever good comes out of helping people reach their potential is good for the whole world. Now, after many, many years, and by the way, having written really the first book for women to help them achieve a state of being where they are using their full potential, and that is the Enchanted Self, a positive therapy. And that is why I call it the Enchanted Self, because I never will forget that every person has a tiny bit of magic in them and the capacity to go much further than they ever realized they could go, to get to their top potential and the joy and the availability of pleasure in life and doing good deeds, of course. And I think that for me, my life has turned to, in many ways, around many times. I found for myself that I yearned to be a dancer at one point. Did I become a dancer? Not professionally, but with many women friends at one point, and people who would help me with the Enchanted Self work, exploring it. We put on a half an hour dance that went to our local community college twice. Beautiful dance, love doing it, and it's just another tidbit of my own personal life. I became also a filmmaker. I'm very concerned with girls and how they grow, and I've made every attempt in what I call selfie filmmaking to help girls come of age in ways that are good for them and healthy. And I'm still a filmmaker, but I've moved again, waiting now on a film that my husband and I produced, which is called I Had an Affair with My Husband, and it's designed for adults to begin to see how adults can better their relationships through humor, through better understanding. And I don't want to give it away too much because I hope it'll be in movie theaters and people will get to see it at some point. I think the one truth that is so important, and we probably would have a world without war, a world of peace, a world of harmony, if we could get there, is that we all have talents and gifts to give to the world. We all have a tendency at times to not utilize our potential. We don't know how. But if we can find ways to recognize our potential and to keep developing it all through our lives, even if we have to change it as we age, as we have less strength, or we can't walk the same way, we can't go ice skating, we stick to the real inner potential that we each have. I think the world would be blessed in a way that has yet to come. I'm now going to give you a little exercise that basically is in the first chapter or two of the Enchanted Self, a positive therapy. It's very simple, but it can really help develop you and help you to find what is really glorious and wonderful in yourself and in the people, of course, that you care about. So you need a piece of paper maybe and a pencil or a pen, or if you don't think you do, just sit down in a comfy chair. And I want you to take a couple of minutes to think about times in your life when you had a great time. Could be as simple as going to see grandma. It could be much more complicated, getting your degree as a doctor. It could be any level. Think about a good time and some of the ways you felt. And then I want you to think about some of the things that you may have wanted to have more time with, but for some reason you couldn't. And they can be from any age. It could be that when you were 4 years old and you wanted to ice skate, your parents wouldn't allow it because they had known someone who had fallen through the ice. It could be last week when you thought that the family was ready to let your 18-year-old buy a secondhand car, but everybody had so many different opinions and arguments and whatever that it never got resolved. So it could be unresolved problems. It could be pleasures that you never got to do. But I want you to think about these things, because anything where you really yearn to do it probably has your talents mixed into it. And if you can figure it out, many things that give you pleasure or could give you pleasure can really become part of your life, and it's not so hard and it's not so impossible, and it doesn't necessarily even have to cost that much. For example, if you're married and you like to walk at the beach and whatever, and you're trying to figure out how can you do it, and you can't, and you won't, and she won't, and I won't. It's all about the frustrations. If you can just sit down, be grown-ups with each other, okay, how about we do walk after supper 3 nights a week? And how about 2 of the other nights I play a game of cards with you? And suddenly everybody's happy. Who's going to do the popcorn? I guess we'll take turns. Well, good luck, happy days, and I hope you enjoy the popcorn.